Hello, everyone. Welcome.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
We're just gonna wait another 2 or 3 minutes to see if there's somebody else joining. Yeah, for now, actually. Yeah, what we usually start off with is just a very short introduction round. So that we go around and everybody can just very briefly say maybe where they study, what they do, and their names, and then we can go from there. Johanna, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name is Johanna, and I'm studying Sustainability, Society, and the Environment at Key University. And I hand over to.
Sorry? And?
I was just handing over to Sarah to introduce.
Okay. Yes, Sarah, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm studying sustainable entrepreneurship at the University of Groningen, and together with Annika, I'm doing a sustainability performance report on machines.
Oh, nice.
We like to see that afterwards.
Yeah. Farhad, would you like to do something?
Hi, my name is Farhad. This is Rasul. We are a student accountancy in Netherlands. We have a course named Strategy and Leadership, and we have chosen Mujin as our case study.
Nice.
Where are you from?
I come originally from Iran, but I'm living in Netherlands.
Okay, Iran. Beautiful.
Annika.
Yeah, hi. As Sarah mentioned already, I hope it's not too loud here. I had to look for a quiet space-ish. We are together studying sustainable entrepreneurship, and yeah, we actually wanted to suggest to give you the report anyway afterwards about the performance indication, but we have a couple of questions. That's why we're here. And yeah, to start off, I really like the format. Really cool that you're offering this to get in touch with you. So wanted to take advantage of it for sure.
Nice. Nice that you're here. Nice. I can't see the first name. NMK Den Haan.
Hi, yeah, it's Nadia actually. Nice to meet you. I also agree with Annika. It's really nice that you're organizing this. So I'm doing a master in governance of sustainability, and before that I have done a master in bioethics, and I'm specifically focused on responsibility in the circularity, for instance. And I'm doing my thesis on the barriers and solutions specifically for stakeholders in the textile supply chain in the Netherlands. And that's why I approached you. So that's my story.
Nice. LM Ali?
Ali.
Yeah, hi, I'm Lea, and I'm also in the same group with Annika, Sarah, doing the same project.
Okay.
And
Elizabeth.
yes.
Yeah, like the others said, thank you so much for offering the Q&A. My name is Elizabeth, and I study international business here in the Netherlands. And I'm also currently writing a paper on stakeholder collaboration in circular economy. So I'm very interested in this Q&A.
Nice.
Great.
And we have one more person joining.
Mitsuki. Hello.
Hi, Mitsuki.
Yes, Mitsuki.
You're joining right on time for the introduction round. Welcome. And if you could just very briefly say, your name and what you study and why you're here.
So I'm Mitsuki, and I also study master's program in sustainability entrepreneurship at University of Groningen with Annika and Sarah and Dina.
So we have the whole team here.
Yeah. Nice to meet you.
Nice.
And this is Lea.
Yeah, maybe a quick introduction of ourselves. I'm Lea, I'm the CSR Officer at Madrid, so responsible for all things sustainability, like our sustainability reports, our impact measurements, yeah, and
B
so on.
Corp assessment.
B Corp assessment, yeah.
And my name is Bert van Son. I'm the founder of Mujins. So let's start the questions. Maybe. Yeah, we always do one question each, but you're with a group, so you're cheating a little bit. Okay, let's go to Johanna.
Yeah, Johanna.
You're the first on our screen. Go ahead, shout.
Okay, so as I forgot to say, I'm writing my master thesis about circular economy in the textile sector. So I would be very much interested, like, what do you think, what are the main actors and factors which promote or hinder the overall transformation process towards circularity in the textile industry?
What are the main actors and preventers, or?
Yeah, like main drivers or and barriers for circularity.
Okay.
That's a very general, large question.
Is that the main question of your thesis?
Okay, we can try to give you some hints. So I think what we need, but maybe Lea can correct me if I'm wrong, but you need all parties. So you need the consumers to start changing their behavior. We need companies to start offering to customers better things and more transparency, and you also need the government to start creating a level playing field. That's a very broad answer to a very broad question, but I think we'll go into detail here, right? Or do you have anything?
Yeah, no, I think it's a good point to say you really need all of them. You need to also look at every partner in the supply chain, because you really depend on the different supply chain partners to implement what you're trying to do as well. At least for us, we're really dependent on the collaboration from that side too. And then when it comes to those that hinder it, I would say there it's mainly kind of what Bert said, sorry. The lack of regulation that we currently have, which really encourages greenwashing, and greenwashing is really one of the key hinderers in this, and of course the brands that participate in that, so fast fashion brands mainly.
Yeah.
Maybe if it's okay, I can ask another sub-question which relates in the same direction.
Yeah, okay. Go
to
ahead.
make it a little bit more specific. So what do you think, what kind of actions, for example, from politics, do you think needs to be taken in order to make the textile industry more circular?
Well, in the broad sense, there's already a lot happening. You've got new legislation coming from Europe for CSRD, for instance, and CSDDD. There's all kinds of directives coming up now, although they are stopped and delayed, but some things are happening. Today, you are, as a company, accounted for not only your financials, but also for the all the other things that you do. So you have to account for your CO2 emission and those kind of things. So it's already a little bit happening.
Mm-hmm.
And what else do I want to say?
Yeah, other legislation that has to have, of course, yeah, so we have extended producer responsibility also coming up now. Yeah. Then there's the point, I think we're really also advocating for that, or Bert is really advocating for that as well, that there's brands that are recycling and reusing material. They're essentially paying double tax on that material, and that's not really encouraging circular circular ways of working within brands, because if they're not being incentivized to act circular, and it's actually more expensive to do so, then it's just going to be a lot slower.
Yeah, maybe to elaborate on that, we take old jeans back, as you know, maybe, and which we use then to make new jeans. So that means on the old jeans already VAT has been paid in the past. And if I reuse that, or if we reuse it and we would use, for instance, what we do now, 40% old jeans into new jeans, then I should be able to give our customers a 40% discount on the VAT at least. It's a little bit wild thought, but I think it should be interesting because it will help the circular economy to grow, not only for textiles, but for all industries. But let's go to the next one, because otherwise we don't get... Farhad, yes. Our friends.
Yeah, Farhad and Rasul. One of our questions is that would you describe some of opportunities and threats from macro environment in mood jeans?
Could you say again, please? You're difficult to understand.
Yeah, sorry. Would you describe some of opportunities, like chance and threats from a macro environment?
Okay. Yeah, we just talked about it. You know, the opportunities are, of course, that legislation is now slowly coming our way. One of the opportunities that we see is that, for instance, the cotton price is increasing a lot. All raw materials are increasing. And since we use 40% waste in our jeans, that's in our advantage. It's maybe a small thing. Some things that are happening for us today, for instance, that when you have the Suez Canal problem about blocking the Suez Canal, we tend to get our goods closer by, not from far away countries, but the material comes from Spain and the production is in Tunisia. For us, it's only 1 day shipping from Tunis to Marseille. So that's an advantage. Those things start helping us. Legislation is starting to come our ways. Threats, I would say what Lena just said, that greenwashing is a big threat. For consumers today, it's extremely difficult to know what is good and what is not good. So you have to be really like half a student as a consumer to understand if what you buy, is it really correct? So you have to ask a lot of questions. That's why we are radical transparent and we show everything we do, even the things that we can still improve. So that's a macro threat, I would say. Any other things maybe forgetting? No.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, welcome. Let's go to our group. Annika, you can ask 2 questions for the group. No.
Okay, then we actually have a bit of different perspectives from it. So I would do one from me and then I would give Lena or Sarah the other one.
Go ahead.
So we saw in your sustainability report that scope 3 is the biggest one that has actually impact for you, for Mud Jeans, from third parties. So we're wondering, how do you, apart from the ethical code that you have, how do you make sure that the partners that you choose have the right criteria and are doing their measurements correctly? Do you check and do they have to follow some certificate and performance report as well, or is trust of alliances everything you can basically build upon, or how does it look there for your criteria?
Yeah, it's a number of things. I would say, of course, it starts with our supplier code of conduct, and whenever we onboard a new partner, we always check that they can fulfill the needs that we have when it comes to impact measurement. We send them quite specific documents when it comes to, you know, we carry out this, I don't know if you read about that, our LCA that we do every year. So from them we really get this in detail information about the exact impact of a product. And by having done this many years, we can also really, or at least I can also really tell if something makes sense or it doesn't make sense. So already when I get the data back, I can get a sense for if this is accurate or not, because in the end, the systems, the numbers in the system also have to add up and so on. So that's, I think, one first check there. But of course, generally, we do only go for a small number of partners and partners that we can trust. So that's really also one of our key values that we say we consciously maintain a shortened, transparent supply chain with really trusting relationships. We visit these partners regularly. We take our customers and audience behind the scenes of those factories, because we really believe that those partners have nothing to hide. Yeah. Of course, you can't, you know, guarantee for every number that they give you that it will be the accurate number, but we only consciously work with those where we have trust in those numbers. Of course, there's also different environmental certificates that our partners have, but when it comes to the exact numbers that they give you for the LCA, it's at this point for us not possible to audit that to that detailed extent, that in that, if we wanted to do that, we would have to do the measurements right parallel to their own measurements. So to that extent that we can really guarantee that for every number, I think for us that's not realistic, but overall we really have confidence in those numbers, and that's a mixture of them doing general environmental audits and us being able to understand the data and them being able to explain where it comes from.
Yeah, and there's also, of course, the personal touch. We know all the people that are in charge of the companies we work with. We have a personal relationship with them. It's also people that have the same kind of attitude and mindfulness that we have, because otherwise it's impossible. You can put all the certificates in the world, but if you have somebody who's a crook, he will cheat anyhow. So he or she. So we try to have also very much have a personal touch. Today that's possible because we have a very short range, a very small group of. If we grow, of course, it will become more difficult. I can imagine larger jeans companies with huge volumes. Are maybe having different challenges that we have. I've also been working for bigger companies, and you go to visit factories and they will show you their window dressing factory, and on the back there are a lot of subcontractors. I know the whole situation, but we have a very good personal touch, which I think is important, and we trust the people we work with, and that's very important also, besides of course all the
Thank you. Actually, maybe quick sub question then. Do you actually then think that this is an advantage of a SME or like a startup, that you have this these like smaller supply chains and connections? Because we would have thought that actually the small SMEs, it's actually harder for you to measure the impact because of that scope 3 being so big.
No, yeah. No, the disadvantage of being a startup, because we're not a startup anymore. We call ourselves a scale-up now.
Sorry.
Disadvantage is that the jeans industry is a volume-driven industry. Although, of course, the word growth is a dirty word, but if I grow my piece of the pie in the jeans industry and I sell more sustainable and real beautiful jeans, high quality jeans, circular jeans, then it doesn't feel too bad. And it's a volume-driven industry, means if I order 10,000 meters of denim fabric, it's very hard for the factory to make it. If I order 100,000, it's much easier. So we are in between, you know, we would like to have our volumes a little bit higher. And that doesn't mean that we then have to look for 20 other material suppliers. That's not the case. So it's also our policy to trust a small number of very good factories. And there's not too many jeans factories in the world that you can really trust, that have invested in the latest technology, that are paying their people correctly, that are, you know, all those things. So it's not like we can choose between all kind of factories. There's maybe the ones that work the way we want to work. I know 3, 4, 5 companies in the whole world, one in Vietnam, 1 or 2 in Turkey, 1 or 2 in Tunisia, and of course then in Europe, but that's it, Portugal, Spain. So let's go to the next one.
Thank you.
That's Sarah.
Yes, hi. So we're specifically looking into the performance of your supply chain because of like how the scope 3 emissions are the largest impact of your business. And so we were wondering specifically about the water usage. So like we already saw in your report that you're trying to reduce water usage when making the jeans as much as possible. But do you also look into like where the water is coming from? Like, is it coming from water stressed sources, or is it somehow having another impact on the environment?
So through the LCA measurements that we do, we measure really a lot of different factors. So on the one side, that's pure water use, yes, but that's also things such as eutrophication and of course the location of, so in the LCA system, so it's called EcoChain, where we do the LCA measurements, you put exactly the location of where certain bits of the jeans are produced, right? So then you can enter how much water is used at that location, and the system will take this into account. So different water from different sources has different impact data attached to it. And then there's things such as acidification, eutrophication, things like this, like toxicity and so on, that you also get data on, and that you can look at as well. But when it comes to our customer facing communication, we really focus on water usage at the moment, because we see that the two things that people really understand, and when it comes to, you know, this communication towards customers, you have to keep it brief, you have to keep it understandable. You can't really, oftentimes you can't afford to have 2 paragraphs explaining it. So when it comes to the brief marketing things, we focus on water use because people know what it means.
Not in your report.
In the report, we can also focus on other things, of course, but when it comes to normal communications, we really use water and CO2. Yeah.
The thing is that you can split it up into 3 phases. The water used in the cotton production, the water used in the facility that makes the yarns and the dyeing and the fabric, and then you have the water use in the factory where they make the jeans and where they wash the jeans. That the last one is quite easy because they took in one-time rainwater and they're still using it because 97% is circular, is reused with osmosis technology. The one in the factory in Spain, I know that they are cleaning the water with enzymes, I think, yes. And the cotton field water use is more complicated because if you buy organic cotton, the cotton still uses a lot of water, but the water is not contaminated with toxic pesticides. So is that water use or is it just rainwater falling on the land and growing the cotton? So that's, you know, a difficult thing to measure and to explain and to talk about, I would say. Let's go to
Nadia.
Then Nadia, finally, you're on. Takes a while, but okay.
No, it's good. Yeah, so just like Johanna.
Just a question to you all, are the answers from the other people for you also interesting? Is it or totally useless? No?
Good, okay.
Okay.
I think they are. Yeah, no, for me as well, because Johanna was asking about the barriers. I'm also looking at the barriers, but specifically for you as a company. So for machines itself, one of the goals for 2023, so this year, is to have 100% recycled jeans. What are the technological barriers that you have to get this, and to make sure that for the EPR system, it is possible to have it post-consumer waste, to have it coming back in the cycle?
That's a good question.
Yeah, when it comes to technological barriers for this, yeah, it's quite a lot because it really hasn't been done to that extent yet. We have that proof of concept with the first sample that we made, but actually implementing this on a broader scale throughout your supply chain and actual production, it's really complicated, especially when it comes to chemical recycling. You really need very, very pure post-consumer waste. And that's really a challenge there, because if you get back, you know, the jeans that we get back, not all of that is really pure waste as you need it for this. So that's definitely one of the challenges. And then, yeah, just trying to find the right way to scale this up. I think we're still figuring out what the challenges there will be. We're in the experimentation phase right now of, you know, first finding really the right fabric, because what we did with the sample is it didn't have the final look and feel to it yet. So we work with a lot of different washes, for example, right? So this can all be things that we haven't yet tested on the sample. So how does a wash look on this different fabric, meaning if you apply different dyes to it and so on. These are all things that we still have to figure out. At the moment, we're at the fabric stage, and then after that come different steps. And then, yeah, does that answer your question? Was there?
Nadia was also saying, if you make it, then is it afterwards still recyclable, right? Is it still within the loop? We think so, because it's still on cellulose based. So you know how we work? We work one part with mechanical recycled, which of course is still there. And then the other part is chemically recycled or molecular recycling, which brings it back to a more like a viscose yarn or vase, which means that it's still cellulose based. So the two of them make a good fiber, and that we can weave. And we think it's still recyclable. Yeah.
But so if I understand correctly, you take in old jeans, but they have to be up 96% of cotton.
Yeah.
but the jeans that you produce are how does it work with the cellulose then? Like, does it break down in cellulose and you?
No,
Well, for the
it's still a natural fiber, although the chemical breakdown has changed. It's similar to bamboo. When they make bamboo, they first bring it into pulp and then make fibers out of it. It's the same with cotton. You can bring it back to pulp and then make a fiber. But that fiber looks more like.
But the point I think was also that if we take back 96% cotton, of course there can be some elastan in it from other jeans and so on. And that's why we always, for example, if you look at our jeans, we specify that percentages of it are post-consumer recycled denim or cotton. And then, of course, we cannot, guarantee that for the mechanically recycled parts, for example, that it's 100% cotton to that extent. You just have to be transparent about that. But I mean, so far we've really done it on a bigger scale to mechanically recycle the jeans. And of course, 100% cotton would be the best option. Of course, that you can have, but that would mean that there's a lot of jeans waste that you're wasting that goes to landfill. So we really also want to use those that have, up to 4% other materials in there, but it's still enough. If we reach the 96%, we don't have problems with the recycling so far. So that's something that does work.
Yeah, so a sub question would be, there's 1% of elastan. I know from some sort of recycling, it's hard to recycle it, especially I think when you want to dye it.
True.
Yeah, well, what we do with the mechanical recycling is we shred the whole fabric, right? So this then gets turned into a new yarn, and there will be perhaps some elastan in there, but we just recycle it as a whole. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
you're right. You see, when you dye the fabric, you will see some white dots, and that's because of this.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
We call it our beauty spots.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's a good way of transforming it. Yeah.
All right. Lena.
Yes, thank you. I would have one question again, because you write, sorry for the noise, by the way. If you rely on the partners and the LCA, how can you really assess that? Like how they, and I mean, of course, you do these assessments, but maybe they are also relying on third parties and they also have byproducts and scraps. Like, how can you really assess how they deal with it? Like, in what detail are you going there?
How they deal with what?
How they deal with like, for example, waste or water or whatever is used up on natural resources in their way of working.
Yeah, I mean, we know the exact production process that happens at our partners. So let's say we talk about the jeans manufacturing. We know that there's stitching involved, there's washing involved. We go to visit the factories, we see the entire process. We have people in our team that are experienced in knowing how these processes work. So we know exactly, this is also how we created those LCA documents in the first place, the data collection documents, by knowing how the production works and then giving a data sheet based on that knowledge. So we know that they don't work with subcontractors, for example, but we also know exactly which steps are involved and which kind of materials are needed for those steps. And then also where they get that from.
Okay, thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, and maybe one sub question, because we were looking on the LCA reports online, but we didn't find any. Is it possible to get them, like just to have an?
Yeah, you can find that online.
I can send you the link.
Yeah, I'll look up the link for you now.
It's on our website under sustainability. If you scroll down, you will see.
I'll send you a link now, and then we can.
Perfect. Thank you.
No worries. Elizabeth, maybe you can already ask your question in the meantime.
Okay, so you mentioned before that it's important to have all stakeholders work together in order to implement circularity. So I was wondering if there is a specific group of stakeholders or a few that you directly and actively involve in developing your circular solutions?
Yes.
Yeah, so essentially all of our supply chain partners, that starts for us with our recycling partner, our fabric product, well, our yarn production, our fabric production, and the final jeans manufacturing.
But also universities. We work with universities to find out new stuff. So together with them in Saxion in Enschede, we discovered the possibility of mixing the two different recycle ways, so mechanically and chemically, and they found out after 1 year of testing how much you need one of the other and how much you need from the other to get to a convenient yarn that looks like a denim yarn that you can still use and that's strong enough, and you know the whole thing. So we also depend on cooperations with universities, for instance. And then what we found out there, we are now bringing it to our partners in the industry, and to say, okay, hey, let's try to scale this. Are you able to make this now on a huge quantity, which is of course another challenge again.
Mitsuki.
Mitsuki from Groningen also.
Yes.
Right?
Can we ask one more?
Yeah.
Of course.
Okay, okay, so do you have like use other frameworks than like B Corp and LCA? Do you use other frameworks as well?
Frameworks for what specifically? For just
for example, GRI or Future Fit.
A lot. GRS.
And well, GRS, that's then more certification, but when it comes to framework at this point, yeah, LCA, B Corp, we have our own CSR strategy that we set up. Then we have, we have goals in our sustainability report, and we have a what's it called, a chemical code for our supply chain partners that's also based on different other frameworks that we then use to assess, okay, where are we in terms of chemical compliance? But that's something that we created ourselves based on the ZDHC framework, for example. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Anybody else?
Sorry. Is it possible to have a look into the ethical code of yours, or is that internal only?
No, that's forbidden. We are transparent. No, you can ask any question. Go ahead. What do you want to know?
She wants to see
if we can, if there's like a link or something to have once to look into it, because then we can just assess because we're going to use the Future Fit framework, and one is also about employee and labor, and then maybe if we can read in your ethical code what you kind of ask your partners to sign, we can assess that, if that's possible.
Yeah, I'll create a link for you in this meeting and I can send it to you.
Amazing, thank you.
No worries.
Also, thanks for the LCA. That was the report we haven't found or seen yet before, so that was good.
Isn't it in the mail that you received from us? Is there no link?
I think there's the sustainability report linked, but we can check. Maybe not the LCA.
I also only found the sustainability report on the website first, but then maybe I didn't see the linking that.
Okay. Well, never mind.
Now we saved it.
Anybody else has a burning question?
I would have another one, if that's okay. So which problems do you face when it comes to jeans recycling? So I know that you have this project to have a 100% circular jeans. So what were the barriers towards this?
Well, we just spoke to you about this with Nadia. It's of course, the first thing is if you take in all jeans, the purity of the incoming stream of all jeans is important. So we have to take off all the metal parts, we have to take off any other accessories, and you still have some other materials in which may be problematic. So we try to keep it as pure as possible. That's the difference also between post-consumer waste and pre-consumer waste. Pre-consumer waste is much easier and much less challenging to recycle. The second thing is that we would like to be, of course, cradle to cradle certified, which we cannot at the moment because we cannot prove everything we take in, what it's made from and how it's made. In the beginning, we didn't want to have any external jeans, only our mud jeans back, because we knew for sure that's organic cotton and recycled cotton. Later, we decided also to take other brands in, because with some study, we found out that after 20 times of washing, all the cancerized and the toxic materials are washed out. So that's some challenge we had. What else? You have to think of recycling of cotton is difficult because you have the fibers that you break a little bit, so they get a little bit shorter. That's why we have to mix with new organic cotton, which we still would like to have a high quality pair of jeans. So we cannot make it too low. We cannot go higher than 40%, otherwise, you know, the quality is not good enough. There's a lot of challenges when you try to recycle all jeans. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Did you send the link?
Yeah, I've sent a link now. With
It's
the
in the chat.
Yeah, any other questions?
Well, I could ask a question. It is also a bit more technical, maybe. I saw that you're also trying to get 100% cellulose thread. Why choosing for this option? Because I know, for instance, you also have a new technology or innovation where you can actually put it in a tunnel disassembler and then you sort of microwave the jeans and they solve. How would you see it? And would you still have to cut the part where you have the threads so that you don't use that?
No.
So this is for maybe for reference or for context for everybody else, the yarn that we use to stitch the different pieces of fabric together to make a jeans still has a core that is made from a synthetic fiber, because especially with denim, you need a certain flexibility in those stitching yarns and strength, because otherwise, the jeans will break earlier, essentially. That's the reason why we have done it up to this point, but we are currently experimenting with 100% cellulosic stitching yarn. There is also the option technically to do it this way, for example, with the dissolving, but from our side, from what I learned from our head of production here, or head of product, is we have smaller quantities, right? So it would be a lot of effort from our side, and also again energy and so on, to do this for every batch of our jeans, to put them through this machine. So it's really a huge extra step that you have to include, and a lot of extra cost, because setting up this kind of machinery at your supply chain partners is also really a lot of money.
Maybe can add on this. The jeans that would be possible to disassemble the yarn, that's going to be a very small part of the big batch of jeans you get back. So first of all, you have to get that out and treat them in a different way. You have to imagine that we get thousands and thousands of jeans back, which we have to produce and proceed into recycling. So it's going to be impossible. And if 100% would be stitched with yarn that would be dissolvable, then okay.
It's hard to separate them from your jeans and external jeans, I guess.
It's even near to impossible, because if there's no badge or no label inside, how do we know that this pair would be going through the microwave oven? And
exactly. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, thanks.
It's a good solution, but we have to be practical also, and get starting the machines and keep trying to work this on a big scale. We want to be scalable, and we want to process hundreds of thousands of jeans per year to show the world that this can be done on a big scale. So we have to sometimes make choices which are not always the best, but they're better. And we have to move forward. We have to become more important in our industry, that we want to be an example company showing that you can recycle jeans and that you can make jeans of all jeans. And if we have to make right choices at this sometimes to keep going, you know, we have to be this superstar in recycling. Otherwise, nobody's going to copy us, and we want to be copied. We want people to do the same thing that we do within now and 5 years' time.
Yeah.
It's still amazing that after 11 years of struggling into circularity, that no other company is doing what we are doing. I would have hoped that we would be not necessary anymore as a company today, but we still are, which is sad, actually.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions?
I would have a sub-question which relates a bit to that, what you've just said. So how do you see the overall market situation in the textile sector regarding the openness for circularity approaches, for example, from the customer side as well as from other textile companies?
It's a disaster. It's terrible. You know, when we started 11 years ago, you had fast fashion, which was a problem, making low quality, fast moving goods totally based on pushing with marketing and sales. And today somebody invented ultra fast fashion, and that's now the big thing and the big money maker, which is extremely sad that we as humans have ourselves pushed by these kind of things into more consuming even more rubbish, throwing away more rubbish. You know that the rubbish stream, the waste stream, is not even any more interesting for the people in Ghana, for instance. They can't do it. It's such low quality that even they can't do anything. They'll burn it on the beach and shove it into the oceans. So it's actually going the other way than I would have hoped with Shein and companies like that. That they are now able to make collections in 3 days' time with their algorithms. What they can find is working well on social media, and we all think that's what we have to produce them in very bad quality.
Mm-hmm.
So no, we are not happy, Lea and me. We're sad.
Actually, a quick question to this one then also on top. Do you
It's going to be
recognize
a good discussion then. Yeah, let's go.
do you recognize any change though in consumers in terms of from either from your consumers or also from others, because you're doing the course now, you're doing education, you're doing like a lot of work outside as well to really enhance the awareness. Do you see some increase of the wanting or like willingness of people in the 11 years that you're now in it, or not really?
We have some figure, of course. We try to do some research and find out what's happening. And when we started, we first tried to figure out, okay, who is interested in what we are doing, what part of the population, and with motivation, we decided to find them, the liberal intellectuals, and we tried to see these groups. And at that time, about 12% of the population was interested in what we are doing. We call that the dark green consumer, let's say. Today, research tells us that it's risen, so it's like 30% of 36%, I think, of population is interested. And during COVID, it was even more. We actually had very good business during COVID because people were taking the time to read our stories and find out more about us and really think of and maybe also the shock of having such a pandemic thing reaching us as humanity made us decide differently. But we've seen the year after it's gone very quickly again the other way, and but it's difficult. I think there's a lot of people getting more and more concerned about climate change and all that, and it's really a topic happening. We see legislation coming, we see a lot of things going the right way, but on the other hand, we don't see our turnover increasing tremendously, which I don't know why. Maybe we do other things wrong. Maybe we don't have the right shapes or the right models, or I don't know, maybe we are too expensive. Let us know what you think, because we are very interested. But it's difficult. It's difficult to compete with the other companies that are lying now and are making beautiful products which are fitting well and with beautiful prices. So it's not easy. Or do you have any? You wanted to say something? You don't have to.
I don't recall now, but I mean I agree with what you say. I mean, generally, just generally, I do think that there's more and more awareness for these topics. But then when it comes to actually acting on it, there's quite an interesting study where I don't remember the specifics right now, but it was that really a high percentage of women, for example, were very aware of the problems of fast fashion or the fashion industry in general, whereas men weren't as involved, for example. But then it was quite interesting to see it when it came to how they acted on this. Women were actually overall the less sustainable consumer when it came to fashion, which of course you can also, you can also explain that by, you know, the societal pressures for women are much higher. We have higher consumption overall. But yeah, it's one thing. The point I'm trying to make is just, it's one thing to see that there is some kind of awareness for it increasing, but actually seeing that implemented in action is quite hard for us to estimate. But yeah, and I think, you know, speaking for the kind of audience and customers that we have, or just the people that are joining this call right now, I think we're lucky, or we're living in this, we're functioning in this bubble where we think everybody is extremely educated and conscious about these things, but that's really just not the reality. So sometimes we think that it's further ahead than it actually is, and it's just something you also have to remind yourself of.
Yeah, and there's also something else, you know, we are, like I said, it's a volume-driven business. Our competitors have huge volumes and also have huge budgets for marketing, which is also, of course, a threat for us, because we don't have that. You know, we have to grow also to be able to do it. But if you can put unlimited money on Google AdWords or on television campaigns or things, that would also help us, because I don't think, if I look at our products, I mean, 80% of the collection is really well-fitted, good-looking, well-washed jeans. You know, you can discuss always about taste, but you can pick your jeans and you'll be happy. The price is maybe on the high side, 129, but you know, a pair of G-Star, Levi's, you name it, are more or less similar. Of course, you can go to Zara and H&M and have half price a good pair of jeans. But we think our quality is better, and we can explain that through our process of manufacturing, why they are better. So there's no reason there not to do it, and we just have to make more noise. That's why we are now in a second round of investment with funds that are hoping first that we succeed and are willing to help us grow. So we are in the next phase of investment to give us capital to be able to shout louder on. I hate social media and pushing there, but we're in this big game and we have to push, and we have to show you nice shots and pictures of our jeans to be able to reach you and convince you that the jeans we make, because in the end, you as a consumer, you want to buy a nice pair of jeans and you want to look good. Your bum has to look good, and you want to be feeling sexy in your jeans, because otherwise you're not going to buy them. So that's all the old rules that also count for us, even though we make a very sustainable pair of jeans. The first thing is, how do I look, and how does it fit, and how does it feel? And 10 more questions, and then is it sustainable? Maybe.
Yeah, I think we have time maybe for 2 more questions, depending how fast they are, because I also have to jump into another meeting.
You're so busy, Lea. I do nothing all day. She's working hard.
That's not true. Yeah, any more questions?
I would have a short question, but I don't.
Yeah, is there anyone else that also has a question? Maybe someone that hasn't asked so many? If not, then we can. No, nothing urgent. Okay, yeah, sure.
You've talked a little bit about the LCA analysis already. Maybe you can just specify quickly what difficulties have you experienced by collecting your data for that?
I think, yeah, I wasn't the first one in this company to start this off, but I think when we started it off, it's also a matter of trying to find out, do your supply chain partners have exactly the data you need? Because it's really quite special to have this kind of data from your supply chain partner to give exactly how much liters of water, how much energy, and so on they need for specific processes. It's really not something you can expect from an average supplier. So I think trying to find what data you can find from them and reliably find from them, and explaining that in a way that's also understandable, because yeah, it can be quite complex as well. I think that's one thing. Apart from that, I think, on our side, understanding that system, how do these calculations work? How do you avoid mistakes within that system? Because it's really incredibly intricate, and there's different calculations you have to do. And, just speaking for myself, I have a sustainability science background, but I'm not a chemical engineer or things like this. And you also have to work with a lot of chemical data. And that's really something you have to learn to understand, and how to use these documents and so on. I think that's another one. And then in the end, I think a big one was also, how do you then communicate that in an understandable way to the consumer, because they didn't have the time to do this for weeks and months like you did. So really, first of all, going into the nitty-gritty, getting really detailed, and then zooming back out and explaining it in the right way. That's also, not that easy, but I feel like we've done it the right way. But it's always something that's always constantly reevaluating, and you also change the way you calculate or things like this, and you have to consistently find a way to explain that